All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. I'm Nick, and this is our daily Cowboys show. A lot of massive news as the Cowboys prepare for Week 6 that we're going to get into. A lot of exciting stuff as well. But first, as we always like to do on this channel, get things started with a little stat of the day, a little palate cleanser, if you will. Without further ado, let's pull up this graphic that was created via Summer Sports. And this is just a negative run percentage, ranking the 32 teams in the National Football League in terms of the percentage of the runs that are negative, right? They're not successful. And the Dallas Cowboys have by far the fewest negative runs on a percentage basis in the National Football League at 5.6%. Second place is the Kansas City Chiefs at 8%, 8.0. In fact, the gap between Dallas and Kansas City, the gap between 1 and 2, is about the same size as the gap between Kansas City and New England, which is the 10th ranked team. So again, the gap between 1 and 2 is about the same size as the gap between 2 and 10, which means the Cowboys are lapping the field in terms of doing a great job minimizing the negative running plays. And this is sort of an under the radar aspect of what the Cowboys have done offensively. Obviously, talent plays a role, execution plays a role, scheme plays a role, all factors here, but minimizing the negative plays has been really critical. Because while we've seen over the past couple weeks, certainly with Pickens emerging, more big plays offensively, that bomb down the sideline at the end of the first half in Green Bay, that long scored over the top beating Sauce Gardner last week. We've seen more big plays down the field. Flanoy obviously had that big catch. This offense has been, for the most part, much more ball control, much more convert 3rd and 4, move the ball methodically down the field. And it's really hard to do that if you get to 2nd and 12, right? If you lose 2-3 yards in the running game. Those are the drive killers, especially early on this season when the Cowboys were a much more methodical football team. I think they've become more explosive in recent weeks, but I think that's just more of a factor of teams kind of adjusting to the Cowboys running the ball well. Teams have to get more aggressive. And this is what happens when teams counter you, right? The first few weeks of the season, the Cowboys staying ahead of the chains, controlling the football, getting first downs, moving the ball up and down the field on pretty much everybody that they played. So what does the opposition do? The opposition gets more aggressive, opens up the big plays that come after that. And this is sort of the back and forth that happens over the season. And this is why minimizing those negative plays is so important, because so many defenses rely almost exclusively on them. They rely on getting a bunch of sacks, a bunch of tackles for loss. They thrive on getting in 2nd and 12 and 3rd and 7. If you get to 2nd and 7 and 3rd and 4, you're in a great position offensively, the way teams normally play defense today in the National Football League. Bill Parcells actually was big on this 20 years ago. He was a big believer in execution in a physical running game just to get to 2nd and 7 and 3rd and 4. In fact, I think he was one time quoted as saying, "We got 100 ways to get a first down on 3rd and 4. We don't have very many ways to do it on 3rd and 10. The Cowboys kind of adopted that strategy earlier this season. Teams have tried to counter it because, again, they can't get negative plays with normal defensive stuff, so they get more aggressive. What happens? You can beat them over the top with Pickens and Flanoy and a bunch of other guys down the field. So we're going to see this back and forth, this Cowboys offense, as they counter to what defenses are doing, as they become more comfortable. But I think this is one of the under-the-radar statistics that points to the Cowboys' success, at least up to this point, on the offensive side of the football. All right, before we get into the news here, I'll go ahead and just pull it up on the screen. There's been a lot of commentary about, or requests, I should say, in the comment section about creating a specific X account for this show, and I have done just that. So make sure you give it a follow. It's just SMI Cowboys Show. There's going to be a link in the description box below. I'll make a post on the YouTube channel, so that way it's there as well. And I'll also try and pin a comment for a few days. If we get enough people to follow it and engage with it, just click follow on it. I'll start sharing and reposting all the stuff that I talk about on the channel, the links, the articles, the graphics, things like that. Plus, I'll do some in-game tweeting and commentary and things like that, and some more stuff as well. So give it a follow, please, if you're interested. Again, it's SMI Cowboy Show on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. And I put a link to it in the description below. But without further ado, let's jump into the news. So this is courtesy of Tommy Yarish. In his opening statement, Cowboys defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus says that with Jack Sanborn in concussion protocol, Kenneth Murray will move inside as he has on passing downs, but now also on run downs. Rookie Shamar James will also be a piece of the rotation, and they are excited about him. All right, so Shamar James was getting a lot of opportunities in passing downs. Obviously, we saw it against the Packers, and prior to the Sanborn injury, and now on running downs, he's going to get, again, more opportunities. He's going to be part of the rotation. They're clearly excited about him. There's been a lot of discussion about Shamar James, but he clearly did his job and did it well for the most part against the New York Jets. Some issues in run defense and things like that, but nobody is perfect. And I think Shamar James getting a lot of opportunities, they're rotating more people in terms of him specifically getting more reps, I think is phenomenal. One of the things that could have happened here potentially is that Eberflus, who played a lot of Clark earlier could have said, listen, we want to go with the veteran. We want to go with the guy that's played more football. And he's like, no, we want to give Shamar James more opportunities. It's become clear that this young linebacker from Florida, he's just impressing everyone. He could be one of these key future pieces of the defense, and him getting more reps, him getting more opportunities, I think is absolutely outstanding. Listen, I've been big on the Shamar James bandwagon going back to July, right? June. Really, I liked him coming out of college, although I didn't like him in terms of starting essentially at this point. I thought he would take some time to develop, but looks like the opportunity is there. He had, a lot of tackles last week, did his job in terms of making the play when the opportunities were there. Nothing stupid, no dumb penalties, nothing like that. I think he's a guy who's set up to be a key part of this defense. I really am. A lot of people look at Sanborn and, they see the flaws. And he, obviously has been a flawed player, but he was at least a stabilizing force, kind of a below average stabilizing force. But, he could make the calls. He could line up in the right spot. So there's a chance with Shamar James getting more opportunities. There may be potentially a few lineup busts, maybe a few, missed gaps in the run game. We saw that, I think, a few times against the Jets. But I think overall, they're more athletic. They're certainly faster. They'll tackle better. They're better in space. So if they can find a way to, get Shamar James schemed up and prepared for some run defense in terms of the gaps and things like that, and hopefully Murray can step up his game a little bit, I would be surprised if this Cowboys defense is significantly better. Now, again, when you play a rookie, especially, a mid-rounder like Shamar James, you're going to get some weird plays. You're going to get some volatility. That's just the way it works. But I'm excited to see how he does. I think he's a future star. I think he's got a bright future in front of him. And I think we got a picture here. Yeah, here we go, courtesy of Nicole Hutchinson. We got a picture of Shamar James, Murray, and Maris Leofau getting work together in practice. You can see the three of those players on the screen right there as they're, working through some game plan stuff, going over their calls and stuff at practice. So again, it's one of these things where Shamar James is getting the opportunities, right? He's getting the chance to see what he can do. Played well against the Jets, did some good thing against the Packers. I think he's a good player. I think there's going to be some bumps in the road, like there always is when you play a young player. They're just, when you go young, you get youth, you get energy, you get excitement, you get buzz, you get athleticism. You also get some, boy, that looked ugly, right? And I think that's what's going to happen to this defense as you play more young guys. But here's the good news, right? Sanborn wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire. You got a lot of ugly with Sanborn in the game. And one of the more ironic things with Dallas with injuries on defense so far this season is that it's allowed younger players to step in and do some good things, right? We looked at Wanye Thomas stepping in for Malik Hooker, and he did fine, it seemed, by all accounts, right? It wasn't perfect, but he seemed to do fine, right? And now we're going to get a chance with Shamar James, who got more reps replacing Clark. He did fine, and of course, in the second half of the Jets did his job extremely well. Now we'll see what he does going forward. Obviously, it's a team effort. It's a team defense, gap control, stopping the run, pressure on the quarterback, helps the coverage, all those elements there. But I think Shamar James, the fact that the Eberflus and company have come out and publicly said they really like him, they really are excited about him, getting him more and more reps, more and more opportunities, right? He's going to be a key part of this defense. He's basically taken the Kenneth Murray role on early down. So that's the way to think about this. Murray is replacing Sanborn. Shamar James has taken Murray on those early down situations, and I think that's very, very exciting to see how Shamar James handles that. I think he's a chance to really do some good things. There'll be some bad plays. Of course, he's a rookie. There's going to be some volatility, but I think there's an opportunity really for him to show his stuff and become a key part of this linebacking core going forward, which looks like, if things trend this way, will be Overshown, James, and Leofau. You talk about young, athletic, fast playmaking. That's a good group right there. I could get behind that group for sure. All right, this next report is courtesy of Patrick Walker at Voice of the Star. Phenomenal follow on X if you're looking for someone to follow. He posted, Tyler Guyton tells me he's officially cleared concussion protocol and was a full participant in Thursday's practice. I asked if he's craving action after missing week 5. He said, man, hell yeah. So this is good, right? Now, whether you want Nathan Thomas to start over Guyton at left tackle or not, or whether you want Guyton to get back to left tackle, Nathan Thomas to maybe slide over to right, or Guyton to slide over to right, whatever it is, I think getting depth back at the very least is important. Because while Nathan Thomas did a solid job, it's one of those things when you're as beat up as the Cowboys were on the offensive line position, and you look at tackle specifically, right? They had Terrence Steele, they had Nathan Thomas, but what if one of them had gotten hurt? Then you're playing a third-team tackle, and then things can go bad and go bad very quickly. Having Guyton back, and even if Nathan Thomas now becomes a reserve, at least he's a quality depth piece, right? And depth is great. It's good to see depth, but when you have depth playing, then you're one injury away from catastrophe. So getting Guyton back into the fold, whether he starts, which it seems like strong indication that he will. We'll have to see, of course, what happens Sunday. Nathan Thomas may and probably will get opportunities to play going forward, whether it's at left tackle or right tackle. we'll have to see. But I think this is a Cowboys squad and offensive line that found a way with the injuries on the offensive line against the Jets. But it's not a recipe for long-term success to play 4 backups, right? Now we know Hoffman and Bass are doing good things inside and they work well together. But even there, you're like, man, what happens if Hoffman gets hurt? Bass getting hurt could create some issues there. You want to get at least some guys back, of course. You want everyone back eventually, and they certainly will. But against the Jets, they kind of survived and did well. But boy, you're one injury away from catastrophe when you're playing backups, and it's good to see guys back into the fold. At the very least, they have the depth returning to the tackle position. All right, this next report is courtesy of John Machota over at The Athletic. Cowboys defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus on their play against the Jets. We took a step in the right direction. We got to take another step. Yeah, there's a lot of people that when they saw this, and they're like, well, what do you mean? You gave up whatever yards per carry, yards per rush. Breece Hall ran the ball effectively down the middle of the Cowboys defense. Yeah, you got the pressures, but you sort of traded, pass rush success for run defense success. What are you talking about here? And I really want to focus on what coaches are looking for, because I'm going on my experience. So I played college football, FCS level. And the coaches, whether offensively and defensively, when they were trying to gauge success, they really only look for 3 major factors. Number 1, did you play good football, right? That's the first and foremost. Did you hustle, right? Did you do anything stupid, dumb penalties? Did you line up in the right spot? Did you communicate effectively? Things like that. That's number 1, first and foremost. Did you not play dumb football? Did you play good football, right? Number 2 is, did you execute the game plan? And this is the important takeaway here, right? There are times where, game plans in the National Football League, you're surrendering something, right? You play a soft shell zone coverage, you're going to get a lot of short passes, right? It's just going to happen, right? If you're playing a team like the Jets, who had a quarterback, Justin Fields, who outside runs, scramble situations, quarterback keepers, can really win games that way. I mean, he eviscerated the Cowboys in 2022, actually doing just that. So what do you do if you're the Cowboys, right? You want to stop that outside run, stop the QB run. You also are playing a backup safety in Wanye Thomas. You're giving up a lot of big plays in the secondary. So you play a soft shell coverage, right? You have a lot of 2 deep safeties with maybe some late roll down safety at the snap, but certainly not 8-man boxes the entire game. And you keep your defensive ends wide, and you're really focused on contain and things like that. Right, you have Maris Leofau playing a lot of wide, a lot of containing situations. Sometimes they would reduce their defensive ends and then force their linebackers outside. Basically, what they were doing is saying, listen, we're not going to let Justin Fields beat us, and we're not going to give up the big passing play down the field, right? That's what we're going to do. And that was their strategy, and it worked. But there's always some give and take. And when you play that strategy, the inside run's going to be there. If you go back and look at a lot of those runs, the Jets had numbers, right? And not to make an excuse, right? You still have to play better defensively. They still should have tackled better in some instances or filled their gaps a little bit better. But anytime an offense has numbers inside, I remember there was one play in particular where I think there were 7 Jets blockers and 6 Cowboys defenders in the box. They had 2 deep safeties and I think an outside nickel corner, and they were playing kind of off coverage anyway. They weren't rolling down into the box or anything. You just look at this and say, okay, of the 6 Cowboys defenders, 1 guy was on Fields, reading Fields to make sure it wasn't a quarterback keeper. So it was really 5 Cowboys defenders against all these blockers against the Jets. And you're like, I mean, you just don't see any chance. You're just hoping to limit that to a 4 or 5 yard gain. It ended up being like a 20-yard run, I think, when it was all said and done. But my larger point here is when you hear coaches talk like this and just understand they're looking for key aspects. They're looking for 3 key points, right? Like I already said, did you play good football? Which for the most part the Cowboys did. They tackled reasonably well. They didn't do anything stupid, right? They hustled to the football. Did you execute the game plan? On all accounts, they certainly did, right? And then number 3, did you make winning plays? Did you play physical, right? That's what the Cowboys did. Leofau with the punch out, right? The big sacks and things like that, and they won the game, right? I know it sounds weird to say, but a lot of times coaches aren't necessarily looking for, hey, number 1, did you win the game, right? They want to win the game. Everybody wants to win, but it's not sustainable if all you care about is winning, right? Because you got to play good ball. And what Eberflus is saying here is, listen, they executed the game plan. Whether it was a good game plan or not, that's debatable, but they executed the game plan and they played good football, and that's a step in the right direction. They got some things to clean up, of course, but I think that's what's really important, because anytime a defense or offense or special teams as well goes into a game, they're trying to execute a plan, right? It's not just going out there playing, it's not like playing street ball or anything. They're trying to go out there and execute a strategy. Sometimes it's a bad strategy, and sometimes you can execute a bad strategy really well and get your butt kicked, right? I think famously Micah Parsons said after the New Orleans Saints game last year that the Cowboys had a good plan, had a good strategy. They just got their butt kicked, right? Now, you can argue whether or not the Cowboys actually did, but that's just the reality. Sometimes you have a good plan and it doesn't work out. The Eberflus is saying, listen, we had a plan. They did a good job executing it. They played hard. They played physical. They played good football, and they made some plays, right? That's a step in the right direction. Some things to clean up, But I think looking at those 3 points, which is what coaches look for, there's no coach in their right mind that in their heart of hearts is going to say, oh yeah, we expect to get 5 sacks, no big plays offensively, no quarterback runs against a running quarterback, and give up 2 yards per carry on the running back. There's no coach in their right mind that honestly expects that in the National Football League. The Jets have good players. They have a good run blocking offensive line. Breece Hall is a good back. Fields threatens in the running game, right? They got Garrett Wilson, who's a good receiver. They got good players, right? You got to pick your poison a little bit and just like the old Belichickism, right? Take away what you do best, make you a little uncomfortable. And what the Jets do best was throw the ball deep to Garrett Wilson and Justin Fields being an athlete and making plays. And the Cowboys, their weakness was giving up big plays to the passing game. So they took care of their weakness, eliminated one of the strengths of the Jets, and eliminated the other one with the Justin Fields scramble and quarterback run. You got to give up something, right? And I think that's an important thing to focus on. Sometimes people focus too much on, well, this happened and this is a problem now. This used to be good, now it's not. Listen, you go back to the Eagles game, for example. The Cowboys were dead set focused on stopping the inside run of Saquon Barkley and the Eagles, and they did a great job of it. But what happened because of that? They lost contain. Jalen Hurts got outside the pocket and ran for a lot of yards. So that's a game where they executed their game plan relatively effectively, but they didn't play good football. They lost contain, right? So that's some of the things that coaches try and work on and improve going forward. They executed their plan pretty well against the Jets. It could have been better. It wasn't perfect. But I think that's the thing to focus on. These players are executing a plan. Don't get caught, looking in the weeds of like, well, they gave up 100 yards receiving to this guy, or, oh my goodness, their third corner played terrible, or they gave up a lot of rushing yards. Sometimes the game plan is, listen, if their number 3 receiver has 150 yards, that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to live with, or whatever it may be, right? And I think that's exactly what the Cowboys that was exactly the Cowboys' approach against the Jets with the inside run. And listen, it resulted in a win and an overall solid defensive performance. So I think that's an important factor to consider when you listen to Eberflus's or any other coach's comments about how they believe an offense or defense or special teams, how they believe they're doing. All right, this next report is an interesting post on X I saw via Ian Hartitz. He said Cowboys cornerback Trayvon Diggs in coverage this season. So we're talking about 5 games, right? 10 targets, 8 receptions, 159 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 2 penalties, perfect 158.3 passer rating. This is one of those weirder seasons I think I've ever seen a cornerback play through 5 games. Because against the Bears, he was pretty solid and then had one horrifically terrible play. Against the Giants, he just had a rough game overall, gave up a few big plays, some miscommunications. Against the Eagles was great. Against the Packers was great. Against the Jets was pretty good. So it's one of those things where on a week-by-week basis, he's either great or he gives up some big plays, or even the Bears, right? He had a solid game and then one disaster play. Now, you can't have the disaster plays, of course, but they do happen. And it's one of these weird things. Diggs is such an interesting study because for so many years in his career, he was a gambler. He was an interception machine. He'd give up the big plays sometimes, but he would make a lot of interceptions, force a lot of takeaways, right? And basically what teams have done, and certainly we saw it at times last year and this year so far, is teams are like, listen, we're not going to give him a lot of opportunities to make big plays, right? We're not going to risk the takeaway, so we're not going to target him that much. It's just selective targeting. And when they've done that, they've been relatively effective. If you look at the Giants game and you look at the Bears game specifically with those handful of plays. But I mean, you look at 159 yards through 5 games. What is that, guys? 32 yards a game? That's pretty good. A cornerback giving up 32 yards per game. I mean, that would be, to be totally honest, that would basically be a career best for Trayvon Diggs extrapolated out over 17 games, right? That's a good number. Averaging, what is that? Help me out with a little math here, guys. Was that 500 yards a season total for number 2 corner, starting corner? I mean, that's not a bad number at all. The 0 interceptions isn't great. The 158.3 passer rating, the big plays aren't great, but those numbers are good. And it's just so weird with him, right? It's you don't know what you get, and it's so bizarre because it used to be Diggs would give up big plays, but he gets the interceptions. Now he gives up and a lot of big plays. The knock on Diggs, right? He'll give up a lot of receiving yards, but he'll also get you a couple interceptions. Is it a wash? Is it worth it? Although I think some of those statistics about him giving up so many receiving yards, a little bit flawed. But still, if we take that argument at face value, it's totally shifted to now teams just aren't throwing the ball at him. So he's giving up very few yards, maybe one big play every game or so, and probably a little less than that, to be honest, on average. And the numbers are still bad in terms of passer rating, but the total volume is perfectly low. It's such a weird year for Diggs. I don't, and his tackling in a lot of instances has been kind of inconsistent. He's had some good tackles and coverage. I look at that situation against the Packers, blowing that play up for a negative loss there. He had a couple good tackles against the Bears, but he also has done a poor job in run tackling a few times. So I don't really know what to expect from Diggs. He's been all over the map. It's been such a weird season so far from Trayvon Diggs. I will say this: if he can maintain this and get a couple interceptions, he could really turn the season around. But it's been a very strange year for number 7 in Dallas. I'll just say it like that. All right, this next post is courtesy of Tommy Yarish. Safety Donovan Wilson was present today at Cowboys practice after missing Wednesday's practice with an elbow knee injury. Both Tyler Guyton, like I already mentioned, and Tyler Smith were on the field as well after being limited yesterday. So Tyler Guyton, by all accounts, is playing, so that's good there. Check that box. Donovan Wilson present today, not so sure his availability, but I think it really speaks to when you have young guys, when you've got feisty young players, Shamar James, Leafau, Bell at safety, Wanye Thomas at safety. It kind of pushes these veterans a little bit to like get back into the fold quicker, right? Because you see these young guys making plays, and you're like, this guy could take my job very quickly. And Donovan Wilson knows that better than anybody, right? He came in as a mid-round guy who just late in 2020 just started making a few plays because of some injuries in the defensive backfield and poor play in the defensive backfield, and suddenly found a way to be on Dallas for now what is this, year 6 now? So again, he's found a way to scratch and claw. He knows it better than anybody. And sometimes when you have a youth movement and you get this spark plug of energy, it forces the veterans to step up a little bit. And you know, maybe in years past, a guy like Donovan Wilson with Mike McCarthy would have been like, I'll take this week off, or I won't push it so hard this week. I'm pretty banged up because I know McCarthy will take care of me, and I know I'll come back the following week and get my job back and all of that. Right now, he's looking at this and saying, listen, if I don't come back, there's a decent chance that Bell and Wanye Thomas will take my spot for the rest of the season. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to have that happen. I don't want to lose my spot, right? The competitive juices start flowing. So this is what bringing a spark plug of a coaching staff and a little bit of youth movement can do, right? It forces, or at least reveals the competitors in terms of, I ain't going to sit out long. So kudos to Donovan Wilson. We'll see if he's available on Sunday. Obviously battling through the injuries there. Tyler Smith's a big one, right? I mean, the official injury report, I think, still has him limited. Those injury reports are so weird because it's sort of a sliding scale. So you can be a limited player, but you can literally go through like one drill and call that limited, or you can go through everything and they just hold you out of team just to make sure you don't get banged up. So Tyler Smith seems to be, he was in full pads on Wednesday, for example. I don't think he was going full bore contact. Obviously, there's a lot of people that don't. Bland doesn't, Diggs doesn't, things like that. So I think it's important to consider that. Will he play Sunday? I really hope so, because again, I mentioned this a second ago, but the Dallas offensive line, they found a way to get it done against the Jets. But boy, you kind of need Tyler Smith long term, right? He's obviously a really good player. The depth at tackle returns with Guyton, which is really good. But you can't go into too many games down all those offensive linemen, because then you're just, again, one injury away from catastrophe. Look, I think the backups played well, but having Smith into the fold would be obviously huge. Offensive tackle depth is back. Just getting those pieces back. And then, of course, you have Turpin returning the following week. CeeDee Lamb and Booker seem to be trending also towards Washington as well, but we're going to have to see exactly how things shake out. So there's a lot of guys returning to the fold in short order. The question is, can Tyler Smith return for the Carolina Panthers game this week? I think I don't say he absolutely needs to, but boy, would it be a boost to get him back. Because, again, they found a way against the Jets, but it's not a long-term recipe for success playing with those many backups. All right, and this last post here, I thought this was kind of interesting. This is courtesy of Todd Archer, ESPN beat reporter for the Cowboys. Quick, before I go into this, I talk a lot about ESPN and Fox Sports and the big networks, and I've been very critical of them, right? I know a lot of people don't like them. I will say this, the beat reporting, the boots on the ground stuff that those organizations still do, they don't do as much of it as they used to, right? It used to be great. It used to be phenomenal, right? Turn into NFL Live just to see, what the boots on the ground beats reporters were saying. But these guys are still doing a good job. Like, I think the front facing, the talking heads, those guys are the problem at ESPN. The guys like Archer and the beat reporters, things like that, they're still phenomenal. So I want to make sure we kind of separate, at least I want to make sure I separate out in terms of criticizing ESPN and Fox Sports and those big media networks. It's the talking heads that are the problem, not guys like Archer. Archer is fantastic. But anyway, he posted Dak Prescott is signed through 2028 when he'll be 35 years old, but can see playing longer. 40s would be a good number. I've been through some injuries, played very physical in college, so if I can get to 40 playing at the standard that I want, that would be awesome. So playing through 40 would basically be 2033. So we'd be talking 7, 8 years of more Dak Prescott, right? So it's sort of interesting to think about and discuss, but these things can come and go so quick, right? Romo in 2014 was, he was a veteran guy. He was an older guy at that point, of course, but, he had only been really starting, right? His first year starting was 2006. So that was year 9 as a starter. He came to the league in 2003. So 2003 to 2014, that was year 12. So he had a lot of years left, supposedly, and then the injuries happened, and then it just ended. So these things fall off a cliff. You never really know. But listen, Prescott's playing good football, and I think it speaks to his confidence, right? Because he kind of alluded to it in this interview that that Archer quoted here, that he didn't expect to play this long originally. It was maybe 35, 36, but he feels good. And I think this is a big part of the Schottenheimer offense and the Clayton Adam offense, is that he feels comfortable. Big part of credit is Prescott as well, of course. But I think the comfort of the offense and what they're doing in terms of the scheme, strategy, and personnel makes them feel like he can play that long, which I think is important. I mean, in years past, he probably was like, listen, I'm getting beat up. Even if he's putting up big numbers, he said, listen, I can't do this forever. But the way this offense operates with the running game and the scheme and all of that, he's like, I can do this for a long time. Which, again, I think it speaks to Prescott's mindset, his physical, how he's taking care of his body and things like that. But it's, again, another great data point looking at how good the Schottenheimer, at this point at least anyway, looks for the Cowboys long term. You have a veteran quarterback that's feeling good, feeling comfortable. Listen, that coach-quarterback relationship, scheme relationship, there is nothing more important than that, right? Everything else is secondary to that, and the Cowboys seem to have crushed it, at least based on reporting up to this point. All right, let's get into the comments, right? Let's pull up member comments first. Like I always talk about, I will always get to the members' comments first, and I will answer every single member comment. That is my promise to the members, who I greatly appreciate. I'll try and get to as many non-member comments as possible as time permits, but try and prevent this from being an hour-and-a-half show. I know a lot of people say a little long at 45 minutes-ish, 45 minutes, but I think that's just the length that it has to go in order to get through everything to cover here and make sure I get enough of your comments. But without further ado, let's get into the member comments. David Dobbins, 5887. Good to hear from you, David. You're awesome. As always, here's what he said. Hey, everyone. Nick has one of the best Cowboys content channels going. Great and timely information. No ads yet. Nick's not hammering away for activity like everyone else, and he should. So I will. You like this content? Nobody knows that, and because of that, it can disappear. YouTube algorithms will bump this channel provider and video at no cost to you. So to let the algorithms know to increase traffic and revenue is to like, comment, subscribe, share, hype. Like is easy. Just say hi. Subscribe is free and ensures you don't miss anything. Hypes. I never share, but apparently it's a biggie for algorithms. So I might for Nick. Yeah, David, you're freaking awesome. I mean, you're such a nice thing to say. I greatly appreciate it, man. That's fantastic. I mean, if you want to support the channel, if you want to become a member, if you want to like, comment, subscribe, whatever, that's 100% up to you, right? I certainly will appreciate it. I won't turn it down, of course, but David, you're awesome, man. And I just try and do what I can to try and do at least a decent job, forwarding the news and meeting what you guys are looking for in terms of content creators as well. That's why I've started the Twitter account, right? And, want you guys, if you're interested, to give it a follow, and then I'll start sharing things on X and do, commentary and things like that where appropriate in game and things like that, because I want to meet if there's a hole in the market, so to speak, I want to meet it, right? If there's some people out there, some fans, some viewers, and feel like there's certain information, there's certain, coverage of the Cowboys or certain interaction when it comes to the Cowboys that's not there, and you feel like it should be, I want to help meet it, right? I think I don't do this for me. I like doing it, don't get me wrong, but I like it. I do this because I like talking to the Cowboys. I think it's the historical aspect and just everything with Dallas, and of course the fans, so that certainly helps, is really cool to me. But I like interacting with you guys. You guys are some of the best commenters that I've ever seen. And look, we've had on SMI, we've got a college channel and we got a main NFL channel. And listen, there's a lot of great commenters on those channels, but I think I've been very just blown away with the level of discussion, discourse, and thoughtfulness, and really just overall intelligence from people who comment. So I'm all about, working with you guys and trying to do better things to make this show and other elements, like the Twitter account or whatever, to kind of align with what you guys are doing. So thank you very much for the comment, David. I really appreciate it. Junior CR4LW, newer member, excuse me. So thank you, Junior. Appreciate that. Next account with Strictly Cowboys would be good. Yep, it's been created. Give it a follow. He also said, I'm curious as to how much influence Ken Dorsey has in this offense. I also don't want the Cowboys to make a trade for the sake of making a trade. We're not one player away from going to the Super Bowl. Boy, you bring up a great point with Ken Dorsey. You talk about a forgotten man, right? People talk about Riley, the O-line coach, Clayton Adams, Schottenheimer, of course. How about Ken Dorsey working the quarterback coach? What is that about? Well, I think there's a twofold thing. Number one, I think working with Milton and developing Milton, I think that's a big part of what he's doing. But I do think if you have an offensive-minded head coach, it's really good to have a quarterbacks coach that's not a play caller, right? Because you want to have a sort of relationship there where the quarterbacks guy and the play caller are different, right? Because you have Schottenheimer coming in, he's going to call the play, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And, then Schottenheimer will say, hey, man, you misread this, or you're a bit late on that. And then just sort of high level, or you need to go to Williams here, you need to go to Pickens here, whatever it may be, and that's say it didn't happen. And then Prescott can, in the film room or in the meeting room or on the sideline, can go to or talk to the quarterback's coach, and they can kind of like, hey, what happened here, and actually get to the nuts and bolts of it. Because Schottenheimer is a play caller and head coach, he's got a lot of stuff going on. So I think Dorsey is sort of a sounding board, I think is really, really important. Kind of like Kellen Moore when he first started getting involved, became a good sounding board for Dak. I kind of expect Dorsey, also a former quarterback, of course, having that same kind of role, and also the developmental aspect with Joe Milton. I think it's a very interesting point. Definitely something to keep an eye on going forward to see if there's any commentary on that. I'll try and do more digging into Dorsey and what he's doing there. But when it comes to a trade, agree 100%, right? Don't do a deal just to make a deal, right? Remember the Roy Williams wide receiver trade? Cowboys, we're close. We just need another playmaker. We're just one player away. You're never one player away. You're never one player away. A lot of people say, well, what about Charles Haley? Different era. Free agency and taken over the National Football League yet. The Cowboys had built a young, exciting team. They just needed, literally in that era, you could be one player away because you didn't have free agents every single year just in a different salary cap environment like we do today, where players just, you have to cut players, you have to trade players, you have to make a bunch of deals every single year. It was a completely different era. You could still build a team over multiple years and keep 80-90% of the team together. So the Charles Haley situation, completely different. And even then, I would argue the Cowboys weren't one player away. Remember, they signed, I think, the Thomas Everett, the safety, as well, on top of Charles Haley. So it wasn't like that they did nothing and then signed Haley. They also added Everett into the fold as well. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves, but the Cowboys have made, if you go back to that era and say, oh, well, they were one player away, that's a little revisionist history. You're never one player away. Don't make a trade just to make a trade. Agree 100%. Great comment. All right, this next comment is from Steven Van Over, regular commenter. Thank you, Steven. He says, MVP honors. I believe Dak said it best when asked if he heard the MVP chants. He said, quote, might not be word for word, my ears work, but we are focused on something bigger here, or to that effect. Team focus, baby. Players like that is how you win championships. Well, I mean, Dak has been there before, and that's the beauty of a veteran quarterback, and that's actually the greatness of Dak Prescott, if we're going to be honest, right? A lot of people look at Prescott playing well this season and say, oh, he's earning his money with his performance on the field, which he certainly is. But one of the reasons Prescott gets paid as much money as he has and is near the top of the salary cap hits at the quarterback position, really going back, since he signed the first extension, I think in 2020 or right after the 2020 season or right around that time frame, I think it's because he's so good in terms of his headspace. Like, he is literally, in terms of how he approaches the game, his leadership attributes, his PR, public face, right? Being essentially the face of the Dallas Cowboys, which is a tough position to be in, he is perfect for it. He's 1,000 times better than Romo, right? I mean, he's at the level of an Aikman or Staubach in terms of doing that. And I think that's where a lot of credit is due. And that's one of the reasons why the Cowboys are so happy to pay him money, because it's not easy to do. There's a lot of great quarterbacks that are really bad at being the face of the franchise, to be totally honest. Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks of all time. He is terrible being the face of a franchise. That's one of the biggest flaws against him. Brett Favre, very similar, right? Like, again, so there are times you can be a great quarterback and even a championship quarterback, but if you're not a great face of the franchise, you can have some flaws. You got to overcome those flaws with just unbridled physical talent. Prescott is so good as a leader, so good in his head, so good at all the intangible things that this is just another example of it right here. One of the many reasons why the Cowboys are happy to pay him and have been happy to pay him for many years. Uncle Bubba knows everything, 9143. Cowboys bias is real, whether it's the MVP or the Hall of Fame. They hate us because they ain't us. Yeah, there is this weird world where a lot of people just don't like Dallas. Certainly ESPN doesn't. A lot of people in the sports media space, which have a huge role on the Pro Bowl, on the MVP, and on the Hall of Fame, they just don't like Dallas. I think a lot of it is jealousy. I think a lot of it is envy, right? If you're, if you're a beat reporter, let's say for the Arizona Cardinals, or you're an ESPN guy who likes the Cardinals or whatever. I'm just picking on the Cardinals just because they're not not the most popular team in the National Football League. you're just tired of hearing about Dallas all the time, all the time. You get shoved in your face all the time. You're just like, okay, I just hate these guys. And then the bias comes out, right? Even if you're a big market team, if you're Washington, if you're the New York Giants or Jets, if you're the Chicago Bears, I mean, it's just like, or the Raiders or whatever, you're just like, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of hearing about the Cowboys all the time. And that jealousy and envy does creep in. It is a fact. It's one of the reasons why, if you look at the number of MVPs in Cowboys history, you'll be shocked to see not a whole lot of them. Right, going back decades, right? It's like, what is that? How does that happen? They've had so many good players and great seasons, even historically. Why didn't they get a lot of MVPs, right? How does, if you go back to the 1970s, how does it take so long for guys like Rayfield Wright and Cliff Harris to get in the Hall of Fame, for example? And you had players from the Steelers dynasty and other teams from the 70s get in like basically within 10, 20 years, and the Cowboys had to wait till the 2010s, 2020s. Chuck Howley had to wait, unfortunately, until he started having some issues as he gets older with age before he got in the Hall of Fame. It's absolute nonsense, right? And the reason is because of Cowboy bias. We all know it. Everyone understands it. Everyone gets it, right? No one hides it either, right? That's why you have these people like Stephen A. Smith goes on TV and loves talking about how much he hates the Dallas Cowboys and roots against them, because people know it. There's no hiding it. And as a Cowboys fan, I'm frustrated because you have great players like Chuck Howley, for example, one of the all-time greats historically, tied to the history of the Cowboys and modern NFL defenses and Landry and winning and championships and all that. And he waits literally decades and decades to get the Hall of Fame nod because he's a Dallas Cowboy. Same thing with Cliff Harris, same thing with Rayfield Wright. It's totally bonkers. It's frustrating to me, to be totally honest. I hate it, right? And this is one of those things where when people sit there and say Jerry Jones he's a terrible owner, he gets attacked all the time, and a lot of times deservedly so. But I think you have to understand, they attacked Chuck Howley by extension by not getting him Hall of Fame. They attacked Rayfield Wright. They attacked Cliff Harris, right? They buried Tony Romo. They buried Dak Prescott. At a certain point, you have to realize they'll just bury anyone that's associated with the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones brings a lot of it on himself, but let's be honest here, guys. If Jerry Jones was the world's perfect owner, they'd still hate him. They'd still attack him. They'd still destroy him. Jared Goldberg, 4904, he comments, the NFL took away all of Roy Williams' abilities with the rule changes. I promise you, if Williams had played in the 60s, 70s, or 80s, he'd been a Hall of Fame player. Not a bad point there. I mean, I think the horse collar tackle, I think that's the Roy Williams rule, right? It's one of the things that's so interesting. People don't look back on that era very much, but I think the early to mid 2000s changed the game, and maybe not for the better, right? The horse collar tackle was obviously a huge penalty, huge call, but also was the heavy enforcement of illegal contact and defensive holding. Remember, because you talk about the anti-Cowboy bias, remember when there was that pro-Peyton Manning Indianapolis Colts bias in the early to mid-2000s where, oh my goodness, best thing since sliced bread, they're amazing, they're amazing, they're amazing, and then they go up to Foxborough and the Patriots just physically bully them and humiliate them and embarrass them. And finally, the NFL is like, listen, we keep hyping up Peyton Manning, we keep hyping up the offense, and the offense goes and plays these defensive teams and get absolutely embarrassed. Got to change the rules, got to change the enforcement. Like modern illegal contact and defensive holding and all elements of pass coverage defensively and the flags that come with it, it all stems from that era. The horse collar tackle and then the hip drop tackle and all those elements there stem from Roy Williams in that era. So I think the mid 2000s, 2004, 2003, or I guess early 2000s technically, if you look at it like that, that had so much of a negative effect on how the game is played today because the NFL looked at guys like Roy Williams, what he did to Terrell Owens, again, a media darling at the time for the National Football League, what the Patriots did to the Indianapolis Colts, again, a media darling at the time of the National Football League, and said, can't have that, right? Got to change the rules, which is why it's so bizarre to me why they haven't banned the tush push yet. I think it's going to come. I think they're going to ban it. I think at a certain point, the NFL is just like, one of the reasons I think the NFL hasn't banned the tush push, to be totally honest, is that it's so hard to, like, how do you write the rule to do that, right? How do you get specific enough? You need to, like, bring in, like, 20 law firms to figure out the right way to craft that rule. It's easy just to, horse collar tackle or illegal contact enforcement and things like that. But I agree with you. Roy Williams did get kind of screwed because ever since that became a penalty, he basically had to change how he played. And it's very hard for a player, once you've already done multiple seasons in the National Football League, to totally flip the script and change how you play the game. All right, this next comment is from Delta704. The Cowboys wish they had Micah Parsons right now, probably even at his current figure. Jerry said he might turn Micah's trade into 5 players. Well, you got a player that regular does 5x splash play rate than your now current best player. Jerry is shooting himself right now, seeing how well Dak is playing. Wish he had an elite pass rusher. Well, I think there's 2 points there. I don't know where you get the 5x splash play rate. Actually, Micah's doing well. He's one of the top players in the NFL with like an 18% splash play rate. But it's not 5x the next Cowboys best player. I think Houston, actually, we talked about this the other day, has a higher splash play rate. So I don't know exactly where you're getting that number there in terms of splash play rate. But in terms of seeing how well Dak is playing, wishing an elite pass rusher, really, we saw this already, guys. We saw this in 2023. Parsons an elite pass rusher. Prescott's playing great. How'd that go? Right? We saw this in 2022. We saw this in 2021. Right? Like we've seen this movie before, or the movie before, where Prescott plays pretty well. I know 2022, a lot of people said he didn't play so well. Look, the reality is, if you go back and look at a lot of those interceptions, deflected passes, Kellen Moore being too aggressive in certain situations, I thought overall he played okay that season. 2021, he was stupendous for most of the year. 2023, he was an MVP candidate. Micah Parsons, all those years, how they end? How did it end up? Right? We've seen the movie before with Micah Parsons, an elite pass rusher, with Dak Prescott playing well. How did it end up? All right, let's get into this next batch of comments here. Ronald Alexander, 5517, he says, you know what I find amusing? No one was talking about the sequencing of plays until Shoddy came along. I could be wrong, but I watched plenty of talking heads from the early days of Brett, Irv, etc., to the people we endured today, and not once was that term used. I didn't realize the importance of it until the Green Bay game, and the Dallas came out running the ball at number 11 to frustrate him, and it worked because until the tackle on Dak, he was a non-factor. Dallas, we have a winner in Shoddy. Yeah, I think it's one of those things you get used to what you see, right? And when you don't see play sequencing or strategy or marriage of the pass and run game for so many years, some people say they had that under Parcells. Let's say they did, right? Okay, so let's take from 2007 through 2024. You're talking 18 seasons where you didn't have that or had very poorly executed of that. I'm not trying to crap on Garrett or Linehan, but that's just the truth. That's just the reality. Or Mike McCarthy or Kellen Moore. And now that you see this, you're like, oh, this is what it looks like. And this is one of the many reasons why the Cowboys, for example, when they struggled with San Francisco and the 49ers, and they would make it look easy, San Francisco would, or when Dallas maybe had a more talented team, like in 2021, but still lost, right? And you sit there and say, what happened? How could this happen? Well, I think it was just scheme. It was just coaching. It was sequencing of plays. And it was just missing from Dallas for so many years. And now for once, instead of seeing it on the opposition, now it's in Dallas. You're like, oh, this is what it's like. And I kind of wonder if a lot of people just said, well, Dallas just wasn't playing good defensively, right? Oh, they just can't stop the 49ers offense defensively, and realize, or that was just really good coaching and really good strategy on their part, the 49ers part, and now the Cowboys are implementing that. And it's like one of those things where it's like, oh, this is what it's like. Travis Graham, 7636, comments, I love you so much that you upload these at 8, so I don't have to listen to 105.3 in the morning drive. All right, so I don't live in Texas. I was born in San Antonio, in case anyone's interested, but I actually live in South Carolina. So I've heard stories about 105.3 and some positive, some negative. So what's the deal with that? What's the lowdown on that? Is it bad? Is it not entertaining? Is it too negative? Too positive? I'm curious because I've heard rumors and stories all for years. Of course, it's almost legendary for any Cowboys fan that doesn't live near the DFW. So let me know your thoughts on that. What's the situation with 105.3 The Fan? How does that work? Is it good? Is it bad? Does it stink? I'm just curious, just because I've never listened to it. Right? I've never lived near Dallas, and I've just heard all about it. Cowboy Prestige 101 comments, I'm extremely encouraged by the next 4 to 5 years for this team. The defense is coming together, and with the drafting process and renewed aggression with trades, I'm very optimistic about this team outside of a massive reverse course this season. Of course, I'm far more confident in this team and coaching than I was in the offseason. Something feels different. Garrett and McCarthy felt so similar. Something is just different. Yeah, I do think there was, well, Jason Garrett felt like, boy, this team is just not living up to their talent. And Mike McCarthy he's letting them live up to their talent, but he's not letting them exceed their talent. So that was sort of, if I could define it like this, Wade Phillips kind of let the talent play out of the team that Parcells built, but he didn't give them an advantage, right? And they failed in the postseason. Jason Garrett, they underperformed. So outside of a couple moments here or there, they failed in the postseason, right? And a lot of times failed in the regular season, right? And then we see now under Mike McCarthy or prior in Mike McCarthy, sort of similar to Wade Phillips, kind of unleashed the talent, and they lived up to the talent, but he didn't give them an advantage, so they failed in the postseason. Now they have significantly less talent than they had under Phillips and under Mike McCarthy, and at times under Garrett, if we're being totally honest. And they're actually exceeding that talent because of coaching. I think, to me, that's why it feels different. You go into a game, I mean, can you imagine a game, back up, let's say, to a Jason Garrett era game, right, for example, or Mike McCarthy or Wade Phillips, where you walked into a game and said, okay, we're down 4 of our top 5 offensive linemen, our backup running back, our number 3 wide receiver, and all-pro wide receiver, right? And we're on the road. Everyone sit there and say, oh, yeah, that's a game that the Cowboys are going to lose 34-10. They just are. It's going to be one of those duds. You just take it in the chin and move on. Maybe they can be feisty and close, but they're not going to win that game. Certainly not going to win the game in a blowout fashion, right? That's kind of the difference. And that's why people feel differently about this team, because for so many years, the Cowboys fans and the Cowboys in general have got used to coaching that either the Cowboys lived up to their talent or fell short of it. And in some cases now the Cowboys are exceeding the talent. And I think it's a good sign. Now, it's never going to be perfect, right? When you have to rely on coaching and scheme so much and you have talent issues and you're beat up, there's going to be some duds. There's going to be some ugly games. There's going to be some ugly performances individually. There's going to be some volatility. But I think the trend is good. And I think that's why there's a lot of positivity. Because for the first time in a long time, as a Cowboys fan, you're kind of like, hey, we're playing like an 85 team on like a scale to 100, but our talent's like a 75 today with the injuries or the situation or whatever it is. That's coaching, right? And that's a huge difference from what we've seen in the past with the Cowboys. All right, that's a lot of comments. Full show today, as always. Boy, 45 plus minutes already. I mean, time flies, guys. And I know some of you guys don't like it a little longer. I get a comment every now and again about wish it was a little shorter. I mean, there's just so much stuff to get to, guys. I mean, it's. I thought about, well, maybe can I do this? Can I do that? And I don't know what, like, I can honestly do this for another hour. So I try and actually condense it to make it as reasonable as possible. But again, like I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in following the new SMI Cowboy Show Twitter or X account, it's available. Again, I'll put a link in the description box below. I'll pin a comment as well. Give it a follow if you're interested. If enough people are interested and people actually care about what I have to tweet or post, and if you don't, that's fine. I'm not going to take it personally, of course. But if enough people do, I'll be active on it, and I'd like to see you guys on it too, if all possible. Listen, we got more Cowboys news coming up in the next few days. A lot of exciting developments as the Cowboys continue to work their way through these injuries, play some young guys, make some strategic changes. We'll talk about that, of course, and more in the days to come. But until then, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection.